Brandon C., and I'm here today to speak to you about stem cells. My topic that I picked, the position I picked, is very controversial. I chose to argue that adult stem cells fail to be as useful as embryonic stem cells in curing diseases. For those of you who don't know what stem cells are, they're basically cells that are found in both human embryos and adult humans that have the ability to become any kind of cell in the human body, to a certain extent. Another term that I will use is called pluripotency. That's basically a term that rates how effective a stem cell can become another cell. So if it has a high pluripotency, that means it can easily become a cell in the body. So the first point I want to make is that adult stem cells are harmed by an adult's life. Just like how if you walk out into the sun, you get radiation, you get like sunburn, there are stem cells in your arm. They're in little bundles spread around the arm. So basically you're exposing those stem cells to radiation, which means if something were to happen and you would need the cells for, let's say, your liver gets damaged, so you need it for that, they might mutate because of the fact that they were exposed to occasionally high levels of radiation through exposure through the adult's entire life. This can result in the cells multiplying too fast and basically becoming cancerous. This theory comes from the embryo rest theory of cancer that was supported by Dr. Isaiah Fiedler, who has a doctorate in human pathology, which is the study of human diseases, or diseases in general. And he wrote a paper in 1978 that basically said that stem cells could become cancerous. There was evidence showing that. That's because when they took tumors, sometimes they did find stem cells in them. And basically what that means is that if someone were to use those stem cells from a later point in life and try to repair themselves somehow, then there's a greater risk that these cells are going to basically flip out and become cancerous, and then you basically just went backwards instead of progressing. Another thing that's bad about that happens through the adult's life is rejection. Rejection is basically when your body realizes that there are cells inside that it doesn't like. Like when you get a bee sting, you're allergic to it because your body realized that it's a foreign agent. So what happens is these stem cells, if they're from another adult, then you'll have a very large reaction to it. I mean, basically, because a cell is coated with biological markers that basically says that this is a cell belonging to a certain body. Now, if you're trying to repair yourself with cells, with your own cells, and that's okay because you already have markers. But if it's from someone else, then you're going to have a lot of problems. Next point is that adult stem cells are not as durable as embryonic stem cells. Adult stem cells have a higher rate through a process called apoptosis. And this is due because when the stem cell is used, it has to be, basically they have to hit it with a virus and other kind of genetic manipulations to turn it, to raise its pluripotency. And what that does is it sometimes destroys the DNA that's within the cell and basically makes the cell eventually commit suicide and just basically just kill itself. And also adult stem cells grow at a slower rate. This is because they're basically older generations of cells. So as time goes on, they slow down. Just like how an adult, you can tell they get older, these stem cells get older as well. And because they grow slower and because they're older cells, they don't multiply as fast, which means that once they become set as, let's say, a heart cell or a liver cell, they don't multiply as fast, so that you basically can't grow a body part. Meanwhile, embryonic stem cells can grow very fast and if you put them in a good environment, then they can last for a long time because they multiply fast as opposed to adult stem cells. Also, adult stem cells cannot grow into as many different kinds of cells as embryonic stem cells. Embryonic stem cells can virtually become any cell within the body. That's because of the way they're harvested, because they're in an embryo which basically will turn into any kind of cell needed in the body, as opposed to an adult stem cell, which is usually used in the body for like a local repair if something dies. Michael Bellomo in the Stem Cell Divide wrote that Adult stem cells simply do not have the pluripotent ability to morph into any kind of cells. Only certain ones they can turn into, like I said. And the last point I want to make is that adult stem cells are hard to find and locate. In the human body, there are stem cells in the adult body, but they're not found. They're not found easily. They're in pockets, different places in the body, in almost every body part, but they don't know where they are. So if you were trying to harvest stem cells from the liver or something, you basically have to take a good chunk of the liver and examine it under a microscope, find the stem cells, then pull them out, then harvest them and grow them, then try and give them this, either to that specific patient or to someone else. So basically, the whole process of harvesting the cells is a lot more expensive and costly, and therefore it moves a lot slower. So someone who needs that that body part or that repair, per se, won't get it in time, or they won't get it as soon. So thank you very much. Basically what I did was I stayed away from the moral and ethical values of stem cell research. I focused on scientific research. Thank you.
All right, Brandon, you started off with a very clear propositional statement. There's no setup of what the secondary points are going to be. Although you do some signposting during the presentation, I think you could use some numerical signposting, because most of the transitions turn out to be and another thing and the next thing, and I don't know how many of those other things and next things that we heard, so it's a little bit less consistent than you would want. I thought you did a nice job kind of explaining concepts, and so there's a lot of information in the presentation and description. The inferences, I think, are not quite as strong on a couple of the points. You had some hypotheticals. There's no statistical information, really. You had a couple of good quotes that explained why there are problems with adult stem cells, although one of them refers back to a paper done in 1978, and that seems to be pretty old data, given the nature that stem cell research has developed over the last 30 years. So there ought to be something a little bit more recent than that. There's no comparative data on the malignancies or the tumors or growths in comparison to the embryonic stem cells, and that seems to be one of the arguments that you were making at the beginning, so you probably need to have that comparative data. You did have some comparative data on embryonic stem cells when it came down to the growth issue and being able to restore a tissue or organs, and there was an explanation about why that was the case. And I think that explanation sounds reasonable, but again, I think in this situation, you're presenting this as if it's factual data, and we don't get a source citation on this, and there's not a lot of expertise that is applied to that point. I'm not saying that I doubt the conclusion, but I think that you need to make a stronger argument on that point. I thought you did a very nice job speaking to the audience. Your explanations are clear. You need to be a little bit more consistent, like I said, on developing evidence on those points and making the contrast, which is what the whole point of your proposition is, a little bit more effectively. All right, thank you.